Welcome to the Daily Exchange. We're here talking about Bitcoin and how it reacts to news, Ethereum's new scaling solution, and Loretta here is talking about regulation. We'll see you guys. We're here talking about. Welcome back, guys. I'm here with Loretta Joseph, Director of Paradigm Global. She is an advisor in really global regulations around the world. Loretta, welcome to the Daily Exchange.
Thank you for having me, Fred. Yeah. It's nice to be here.
It's very kind of you to join us with all your travels all around the world. We're going to talk about some news and events, and you've got some really interesting views as well. And we're going to talk about regulation as well. Yep. Are you down for this?
I am.
Let's rock and roll. Breaking news right now, Google is set to unban cryptocurrency advertising and they're starting in the US and Japan. What do you think about that whole situation of banning ads and unbanning ads?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to, as long-term business models, ban ads. And I don't think that's a particularly good idea. I think the banning will stop and they will unban again.
Yeah, 100%. Washington, all the venture firms, so we've got Coinbase, Ripple, NASDAQ, and Andreessen Horowitz have been invited to Washington to debate crypto regulation. Part of the invite reads, your input is critical to helping us preempt a heavy-handed regulatory approach that could stall innovation and kill the US ICO market. That's a big deal.
That's a great thing because regulation generally is a lot slower than innovation. Innovation is moving really, really fast in this space, and regulators now are grappling with the fact that even if they're moving ahead, they need to keep up with the innovation. So I think that is the best move that I've heard. I'm really excited about that one.
Excited, that's great, Loretta. Another breaking news, Coinbase has released a listing process for new coins. Maybe XRP's finally, by the way, XRP and Ripple, completely different separate organizations, and we'll talk about that coming up as well. XRP potentially could get on Coinbase, and Coinbase say, and I quote, most interestingly, will allow to list most digital assets that are compliant with local law by satisfying listing requests in a jurisdiction by jurisdiction manner. In practice, this means some new assets listed on our platform may only be available to customers in select jurisdictions for a period of time. What do you think about certain coins being banned in certain jurisdictions? All right.
I think you have to look at the legislation around which jurisdiction you're dealing with. So, that's what regulations do. And I'm really actually happy we're talking about digital assets. So I think it's really good that we've gone out of cryptocurrencies and we're talking about a new asset class, which this is, digital assets. But you have to be mindful that there are regulations in different jurisdictions, and the exchange is good. That's a really good move. That I think they're starting to look at how they how they are mindful of the law in different jurisdictions.
100%. So XRP potentially could be deemed, and it's still speculation out there. Is XRP a security? Who knows? Do you think XRP is a security, Loretta?
I think it has characteristics of being a security and a utility and something in between. And I think look at the ICO legislation that I've helped draft, it's really mindful that we look at these things from all aspects, because securities law does not, is very limiting to securities. These things might start out as utility tokens, but I think if there's an investment functionality of the token, you have to be looked at as a security. But just because you're a security doesn't mean that you can't be a utility. So I think there's characteristics of tokens which can be both securities and utilities.
I hear you. All right, moving on. XRP actually price has been up really high. We're up 50% this week.
Yeah.
Back down as well. Actually up today about 7.27% in the last 24 hours. Moving on, we're looking at the whole week has been quite positive. If we look at the graph here of all the coins, everything throughout the week looks pretty green. Ripple big 54% up, Cardano 13% up. Everything's pretty up, except for Dash. Anyway, definitely potential, but there is some talk right now, according to News BTC, that Bitcoin's failure to maintain the 6,600 support, currently trading right now at $6,393. The test of support is 6,275. Will we go there, or are we going to retest the 6,600 mark? Do you think we're going up or down with Bitcoin? All right.
I don't make predictions.
No predictions.
There's ups and downs.
No predictions.
Yeah, but I think it depends what you're looking at. In the technical analysis, if you're looking at minute by minute charts, you're looking at daily charts. There's still a lot of volatility. I think what you're seeing at the moment is a little bit of positive sentiment. I think in the long run, all these things probably go back up, but you're just seeing a stabilisation of markets. This is no asset goes one way forever. You know, and I think that's a very important thing to note, that speculators don't make money by buying an asset because it goes one way. Everything goes up and down.
Just want to shout out, guys, now right to you. A big shout out to our very big subscriber, Life Size Box, who has watched every single show. Big shout out to you. Always active in the chat. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Do send your questions in. Shout out to Life Size Box. He's just, he or she, sorry, I'm not sure, has been supporting. Big wave out to Life Size Box. Welcome. And do send your questions in, guys, for Loretta and myself. This is obviously beaming out live, and we will respond to your questions. Joel, when we do get one, we'll ping that through to us. Moving on, Ethereum, potential scaling. Been talking about it. Vitalik's come out big, saying from 7 transaction seconds to potentially 500. The big thing here is potentially using zk-snarks, which is much, much faster, saying that Ethereum transactions will be about 24 times faster. ERC20 tokens, around 50 plus times faster.
Wow.
And Joel, I was going to bring up this ETH paper image. The big thing here, I think we want to talk about, this is by Vitalik himself. It's on-chain.
Yep.
That's a big deal, Loretta.
That's a huge deal.
That's the holy grail of blockchain scaling, right?
It is. Everything's on-chain. It's interesting.
It's like literally like the animals when they've left the water and started breathing oxygen.
Yeah, the on-chain stuff is really, really big. That interesting that he talks about, you know, the computational demand on that. I think that'd be really interesting to go in and have a look at that in detail.
So getting onto that, I guess, you know, this is on-chain. It's in. And this is important. What it means is that these transactions will happen on-chain. The other potential proposed solutions of scaling Ethereum have been off-chain. Off-chain. So we're talking what's called technically Plasma and Raiden. They're called layer 2 solutions. If Ethereum was to scale on-chain, Loretta, like that's a game changer,
yeah,
right?
So
how big a deal is that?
Well, it's huge. I mean, I think, you know, from when you look at Bitcoin, obviously, you know, came out in 2008. Then Ethereum came out with their solutions in 2012. I think the protocol has been going through some stages of maturity. This is obviously the next level for them, and if they can do that, then you know, this is when blockchain and solutions become a big deal across every industry and every vertical.
Because there's lots of great applications built on Ethereum, right? And a lot of them have sort of hit a point where they can't scale terribly well. This will literally open the door and dramatically help them. Do you think this will change the whole entire space again?
Yeah, totally. And I think this is what you're seeing, like these protocols that are maturing. You know, so I think that's been one of the problems with Ethereum, is that they've only done a lot of pilots, and it's been very hard to bring it into mainstream. If they can solve the scalability issues of it, this opens up blockchain and, you know, the solutions that people can now build applications across every vertical. So that this is, you know, one of the most exciting things that we've probably seen
for a while, right? So talking about it, so they're combining zk-snarks. zk-snarks is, the main element of that is with inside Zcash, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But the main issue here is the advances in technology that Vitalik is saying that will happen, that will allow this very computationally difficult thing to occur.
Yep.
Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think it's possible?
Of course it's possible. I mean, if we look where we've come from Ethereum, or we've come from Bitcoin in 2008. I mean, I think what you will see is a lot of these protocols will start working together, because the scalability only issues is when we have people that actually work together across different protocols. Yeah, Ethereum is the most exciting thing that we've seen since Bitcoin, and I think out of that, obviously it's coming out of some other protocols. You'll see some of these protocols merge and start to work together to build applications, that are incredibly exciting.
So guys, we're going to be having an episode coming up as well talking about Ethereum scaling. Do subscribe, press the button upstairs, click on the bell, like life-size box, and do the bell. Well done, good call.
I like the bell.
I like the bell.
I like the bell.
I like the bell. You can press the bell next.
Well.
There it is. Press the bell, guys, to subscribe. Let's talk about Zcash, right? So Zcash, there's been a potential hypothetical. I'm going to use this. It's very important to
Yes.
Vlad, one of the main developers, Vlad Zamfir, has come out. Joel, if you want to bring up the tweet, with an exchange between Vlad, Vitalik, talking about this idea, can Ethereum and Zcash merge? Zcash is currently trading around $133, is the 21st largest coin. This is all hypothetical. He's saying, communities can't credibly commit to merging in. One part of a community could be excited about a merger and push it through, and the other part could strategically be silent until that happens. Get merge coins, but keep supporting the original chain. Do you think that there could be a merger between two coins to solve some of these issues that some of these blockchains are having?
I think you are going to see some mergers, but it's going to be at the protocol level, because it's open source. I mean, and that's been my argument to the whole community. It's like, start working together, because I don't think that's a bad idea, because the more collaboration we have and the more open source and the more people we have across protocols, the faster we're going to solve the issues of scalability, and the faster you're going to get more of adoption. So I think yes.
So moving on, talking about EOS, 24-hour trading volume is up 15%. EOS is kind of stable around $5.32. But news is out from CoinDesk reporting that 4 early-stage staff have left Block 1 and have started a new business called Strong Block. It is currently in stealth mode. It is not clear exactly what they are doing. It is the Vice President of Technology, Vice President of Product, Vice President of Infrastructure, and the Senior Director of Technology Products, quoting, "We left because we saw a need in the blockchain marketplace that Block 1 was not going to address." One of the former Block 1 employees who left the company earlier this year in summer reportedly told CoinDesk. What do you think about EOS in terms of its scaling and all the, I guess its centralization potentially, or its mild centralization with its proof of stake model? Or do you have any views on EOS?
I mean, I think the EOS guys are trying to solve a problem, and yeah, I take your point on the centralization. But I think the more people that EOS can bring together in the community to build different applications, that's not such a bad thing. Sometimes you need a bit of centralization in the processes to bring those people together. So
50-50?
Yep.
We
have to see. Let's just see if they start to implement what they said they'll implement.
Let me get Loretta's gauge on this. So we're saying Bitcoin, I think Loretta's 2 thumbs up. Ripple, mild thumbs down, would you say? Or half a thumb up?
Yeah, half a thumb up.
And where would you place then EOS in that?
I think probably on par with Ripple.
On par with Ripple? What about Ethereum?
My view of it is that Bitcoin did one thing, and to date, as far as a cryptocurrency did, it helped in the security of what we see the movement of assets. So it's the one application that actually works. Ethereum have come along. We need to see things start to be implemented. So things like EOS and Ripple, yes, the basis behind the protocols and the security of these things are really, really good, but they need to start to work. They need to start to build applications that are workable and scalable. And that can solve other problems, but besides the security of what Bitcoin does. So I'm a Bitcoin diehard because it's one application that actually has a use case that works. The others, yes, but we have to see the implementation.
Okay, so the jury's out. Let's move on now, Loretta. We're talking all about advisory around regulation, and I just want to talk about Loretta as a very illustrious past. Recently also talked at the first ever OECD conference dedicated to blockchain, an OECD advisor. You were also the chair of ADCA, the Australian Digital Currency and Commerce Association.
Yeah.
And you have also 25 years across financial markets, being a trader as well.
Yep.
On the futures exchange you were talking about before, when they were physically down there, trading pieces of paper.
I think I've traded every asset class known to man.
Wow. trading. At Deutsche Bank and Macquarie Group. You have also written the regulation for Bermuda, which is now law,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken. Currently working with Mauritius and a number of other countries right now. It's incredible. Welcome again, Loretta. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a bit about how did you get to be one of these, these advisors in blockchain? Tell us the story. So,
long time ago, back in 2012, I started to look at this thing called Bitcoin. In 2013-14, I got really interested in blockchain. I read a book called The Blockchain Revolution. I started to work with the Australian regulator because the Australian regulator is probably the most innovative of all regulators we've seen in the last 5 years, and they acknowledged way back then that blockchain was probably going to change the world. So I actually was working for a small stock exchange in Australia. So when I actually first looked at blockchain, I looked at bringing T+3, including settlement, post-trade markets, to T. And I looked at using the Ethereum network, how we could take friction out of the system in the post-trade, because it's the biggest problem is the clearing and settlement of assets. If we could streamline these and bring back office procedures and processes that brought the friction in the system from T+3 to T, then that was going to be a winner for someone like me that trades asset classes, because the capital requirements in the post-trade settlement are very, very onerous on the industry and the economy. So I looked at it from a blockchain solution, not Bitcoin. Then I went to try and buy some Bitcoin. It was very, very difficult. So I looked with ADCA, and we went around about trying to write self-regulation, because if you self-regulate an industry, it's better than no regulation. Moving forward from that, I looked at what an exchange was. An exchange in the true sense of the word is not what these digital asset marketplaces do. They don't take novation of risk. So it's marketplace of buy and sellers. So then I started to talk to governments and regulators and central banks. And the problem was that the people that built Bitcoin and the people in Ethereum are quite young. So the first process was an education piece. What's the difference between a cryptocurrency and what is blockchain? What are the uses of it? So I'm the old person. Yeah, I was a banker, and forging the dialogue of how do we now all collaborate? Because I think if the internet taught us anything, the walled garden approach to technology doesn't work. So yeah, we have a chance in history to work together. That's governments, regulators and industry, to write the new laws and regulations for the 21st century economy.
Wonderful. Now, OECD, forgive us for everyone watching, tell us quickly you're in Paris this month. What does the OECD do, and I guess how will that affect blockchain? So
the OECD came in to existence after World War II to redesign the economic development of the world after World War II. So the mantra of the OECD is better policies, better lives. They're the policy organisation that helps countries, member countries, write better policy to affect decisions for economies, and also the social economic impact of how countries work together. So there are multiple directorates in the OECD, from tax to social policy to every policy affecting every government we see around the world. The ex-head of the regulator here, Greg Metcalf, is the ex-head of ASIC, now is the head of the Director of Financial Enterprises. He was the spearhead driver of blockchain technology being accepted in Australia for the last 5 years. So that's a really good thing. So he has brought the use of blockchain adoption across everything from supply chain to provenance to digital IDs to the forefront of now what the world and the world's economic organisations need to start to consider for this new path forward. The OECD are very instrumental in making policymakers work together and countries. So it's a big deal.
So it's like the centre place where all the policy goes and things like that. Okay, so what's the attitude of what would you summarise the attitude of people who attended the OECD about blockchain? Where are they sort of at?
So this was the biggest conference I think that's ever been held in history to date on blockchain. So we had practitioners, we had the core developers of the protocols, we had over 1,400 people came, we had policymakers from every country around the world, we had central banks, we had regulators, and it was the first open dialogue that we've had between all those counterparties to figure out what is it, how we all work together now to write regulations that don't kill the ecosystem. And how do we work together to
was it positive?
It was very positive.
Yeah.
It was, you can go and have I'll give you the links to the OECD blockchain forum. It was the first time that we've all collaborated as industry and governments and policymakers, and I'm really excited because this opens economies and it opens the digital 21st century roadmap, I guess.
Okay, we've got a map here on Finder, which is talks about the regulations around the world. Where would you say people are really warm? Obviously where people are really warm and where they're not. Where would you say the opportunities are right now? Where are we? Which countries around the world do you say are moving? We've sort of mapped here some, but I think I'd be very interested to hear your views on.
So as a prelude, Australia and the regulator and the government for the last 5 years have been incredibly supportive and incredibly good in writing the roadmap for regulation. So we sat down several years ago in Australia and we mapped out what a digital asset was. So there's a lot, cryptocurrencies is only one application of blockchain, but this is a new asset class. So Australia was the first place to recognise that a digital asset is a new asset class. I work a lot. I've worked obviously in Australia. The Commonwealth countries, people have the same law systems. People that have got one regulator, not a hybrid mix of different regulators, one government with leaders that have a will to spur technology and economic change are the ones that will win. So in small nation states that don't have legacy systems to change and where we can implement nimble and new ways of regulation, which protect the jurisdiction under what we need to for KYC, AML, but they also allow entrepreneurs to come in, have the legal frameworks of the country to innovate and to build their businesses.
So recently, small like Malta, Bermuda, Gibraltar, you spoke at an event recently, Roadmap for Regional FinTech Hub. Tell us about, how are these nation states leveraging blockchain versus the bigger ones? Like, how are they doing this? What's the difference?
Because small nation states are nimble. They can don't have a huge legacy system. So in places where you rewrite laws and regulations in larger countries, it's very difficult to do. And innovation changes the game. So, we haven't seen a time in history before where small island states can come to the forefront and say, look, hey, we on the global stage, we're happy to be innovative, but we understand that we need to embrace technology because you can't grow. There's no room for manufacturing in small island states, or they have a level of human capacity. So how do we leverage technology, which means we don't have to have large populations? I work in jurisdictions that are financial services jurisdictions, and that's mindful. So I think, and also countries that have got the same law system. So there's 52 countries of the Commonwealth. We have a clear mandate. We can roll legislation and regulation around those countries, where in places like Europe and the US, it's much more difficult because you have a sleuth of regulators. You have, in Europe, there's a big spaghetti jar full of regulators. In the US, every state has a different regulation. So it's much harder to write uniform regulation where you've got regulators.
What do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do? Like these smaller ones that adopt it, that the bigger ones aren't. What's going to be the killer? How are they going to move forward and other ones aren't?
Because they can legislate in law the rules and regulation around digital assets and ICOs, and I think that's been the big thing.
A lot of exchanges are moving to Malta. right now. We've noticed like Binance and things like that as well. Do you think that trend will continue?
Look, and I don't think it'll be just Malta. I mean, it's an interesting one. I see places that have been obviously known in the past as tax jurisdictions. I think now we can start to move towards countries to have technology treaties. And how long do we need tax treaties? If we can allow an innovator or someone from the ecosystem to go and set up in Bermuda or in Malta or in Mauritius, places that have got the same law system, that we can now passport companies between these jurisdictions and be mindful of their financial services jurisdictions. If we have a short-term gain and some of these smaller islands, states are writing laws of regulation, but they're not going to be adopted on a wider scale with other federated states, it's very hard to scale your business back into a mature market.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you recently spoke at Innovation Australia for the ability to reach the unbanked, people that only need a mobile phone and peer-to-peer transactions. Banking the unbanked, do you think that'll cause the next big wave of cryptocurrency?
Yes, because that's one thing that I get out of bed for blockchain every day, because I lived in India for a really long time, and the issue is that it's not about cryptocurrency, but it's the underlying technology. Digital ID. It's the first sounding block of starting to have an ability to be a person. So if you live in a lot of these emerging markets where you don't have an identification, you can't vote, you can't open a bank account, you can't buy land. Let's look at how these cryptocurrencies are one application, but the blockchain technology underlying that gives an ability to all of a sudden to build build identities for people. So people in crisis states, the last thing you do is, if you're in a state of war, is run off with your passport. So to me, it's about being able to use the blockchain technology for things like digital ID to start the building blocks of giving people the ability to now embrace and to be in part of the non-banked environment. But cryptocurrencies are very good at that, because it's a barter system. I may not have a bank account, but I can download a wallet on my mobile. 100%.
Tell us, forecast for the next 5 years, cryptocurrency regulation, where do you think it's going globally? Give us your forecast, Loretta. It's a big call.
Oh, wow. So I'll be old and grey in that.
I think it's going to be tolerated,
regulation body. I think regulation is mainstream. So I think what you're seeing now, and obviously I'm working in, as I said, if we can have a rollout of 52 countries that can have harmonised regulation. So if we can have a rollout of industry best practices and standards, which we're seeing, if we can have regulations which are uniform and consistent across jurisdictions, I think the ecosystem will develop. And for me, it's where do I see this in 10 years? I do a lot with a man called Robert Kahn. Do you know Robert Kahn?
I don't.
He's the father of the internet.
Okay.
He built the first TCP messaging system of the internet. No one ever knows who he is. I feel so bad for him. But it's like in those days when that was built, there was no regulation.
The guy who invented the blockchain.
I invented the internet. I think he would tell you believe you do more than the blockchain. But so I think what that was one protocol. Well, how you use your mobile phone, how we communicate now. There's multiple protocols built on his first ever. His first ever protocol. Yeah. What you will see is merging, I think, of protocols. The security baseline of what you see in blockchain will just get better and better. So we won't even be talking about this in 10 years. I believe we don't talk about how the internet, the protocols of the internet are regulated. No. I don't think we will talk, it'll be just an infrastructure in the background of everything we do everywhere.
Gotcha. What don't we know about regulation right now? What's sort of happening behind the scenes? It's not in the media. What can you talk about? Like, what sort of...
Well, I can tell you that for the first time in history, we're having collaboration across regulators, policymakers and industry. For the first time ever, we're seeing people, like I said last week, the industry, governments come together and go, all right, we have a new technology. We need to be able to do this from the same place. So I think you're seeing collaboration behind the scenes. And it's the most exciting thing that I've ever seen.
Wow. Wow.
Regulation is not bad. Everybody seems to think that regulation is a bad thing. Regulation gives credibility and it gives a legitimacy to an asset class. This is what you're seeing at the moment. Yeah. Regulation is good. No regulation is bad, because all regulation does, and what regulators look at, is how do we stop people being scammed?
Gotcha.
Consumer protection, and how does governments protect their citizens? And so regulation, it has to be light touch, because over regulation kills an ecosystem.
Let's talk about that, because I think a lot of people have been hurt recently by ICOs. That they've gone down 90% plus, 98%. What do you think the future of the ICO is?
It will be a licensed activity, and you can go and see what we wrote in Bermuda. We are the first country in the world to have a legislation around ICOs. Whether you're a utility, a security, or something in between. I think the beneficial ownership of an ICO is very, very important, and I think to protect consumers from being scammed. You can't stop people investing in technology. I can't tell my 14-year-old that she shouldn't use technology, but what I can tell her is there is a risk, and that's all. The regulation is saying there is a risk involved. As I said before, nothing goes one way forever. No asset class goes one way forever. Be mindful of what you invest in. So the consumer protection is very, very important.
Okay, and how could we present? How are we going to stop these scammers with ICOs?
So again, if you go and read what we wrote in Bermuda, the law is very, very clear. If you, it's a licensed activity, the beneficial ownership needs to be understood.
And just explain that. So beneficial ownership. What do you mean by that?
Beneficial ownership of the company. So when you come in, you're a licensed activity, you set up. The ICO regulation in Bermuda is very stringent and it's strict. So if you look at the rules around enforcement, it's a jailable offence if you break the law. You go to jail in Bermuda. Bermuda's a lovely place, by the way, but I think I don't want to be sitting inside the jail and looking out at the beaches the other way around. Gotcha. And there is an enforceable money fine as well.
Right. And how long is that? And what would you need to do to would that be stealing money, or what sort of things is the regulator looking for?
It's a very clear piece of legislation. It's an ICO bill and give everybody access to it. So, but there are things that you need to do under being a licensed activity.
Okay, and so when you say beneficial ownership, does that mean that all ICOs, if it's are they going to be securities then?
No. So this is the other thing. It is an interesting mix. So we came up with a set of regulations around what is a utility token, what is a security token, and what is in between. Because as I said to you, this is a new technology. You might start off as being a company that is trying to build a Google 40, but you may have you may not do that, and all you've done is your coin has gone up in value. You have made money as an investment. So people invest in it to make money. So that's a security. You might start as just being a security. I mean, Telegram was a security, and I think that there's ways to make money, which is fine. And you then might go on to be a utility. So the laws and the regulations have to be mindful that things change, but there has to be a clear guideline around why you're doing that activity and for what purpose you are doing it.
So utility tokens, obviously they're just providing the ability to do something with it, and people speculating in that. Which is again very high risk, and this idea that they, trying to remove that blurring of the lines, that this doesn't have any ownership of the company as well, and that's what you mean by beneficial ownership.
Yes, that's what I'm. So I think but if you set up a company under doing an ICO activity, like a licensed activity, then there's beneficial ownership of the company.
Yes.
But I think that's all regulators are looking for. If everything goes wrong, who are the people that we come back for recourse? Because in a lot of these jurisdictions, there have been a lot of ICOs going on with no regulation. So that's very dangerous. And that was one reason in Bermuda. We didn't just go and set this up because we wanted to go and set up an ICO law. There were people coming into Bermuda that were doing ICOs with absolutely no recourse. So there was no regulation. So to stop the jurisdiction being put under duress, and to stop people coming in and scamming people in other parts of the world, was very important that we actually be proactive, not reactive.
So let's just walk through this. So let's say we've got this utility token. It's had an ICO. It's very clearly a utility token. It's only for the to use this application they've built. It goes from drops down 95%, whatever it may be. it then they build some of this software. It doesn't get adopted. They spend all the money, and they just walk away.
They walk away. So in Bermuda, you cannot do that. So it's a licensed activity. There's some of it relates with the company law, but it's really interesting. You should go and read it, and it gives you a very clear outline of what you can do as utility and what you can do as a security, or what you do as both. I
guess I'm wondering, like, for there's a lot of people out there right now holding these utility tokens. What can they do now? Is there anything they can do? Is there any sort of benchmark there of what they might be able to do for some of these tokens out there that aren't really doing anything? They've spent all their money and now...
Yeah, so I think that's, you're looking at it in recourse. It's very hard to pinpoint what has happened in the past. So if you come in under the new legislation in Bermuda, you're actually licensed as of now.
Right. Makes sense. So it's not grandfathered in?
No.
Gotcha.
And it's very difficult to do that with regulations, and I think that's why it's important that we move forward, and the buyer beware pieces of all of this are taken into consideration by the regulators in these jurisdictions.
Okay. Moving on, I guess you were the chair of the ADCAR.
Chairperson.
Sorry, chairperson. Chairperson. What's that organisation doing? It's the Australian Digital Currency and Commerce Association, and sort of what are they doing?
So ADCAR is the industry body. ADCAR are awesome. So what they do is they bring a voice. There are in other parts of the world there are similar industry bodies. So it's writing self-regulation and standards that the industry can adhere to, and it's also been a voice for the industry into government and policymakers and regulators. It's an industry body. Mm-hmm. It's the blockchain industry body. It's been around now since 2012. We have now, I think, over 52 members. I think we started with 3, and it's been very, very important in being the voice of the industry.
So moving on, I guess, talking about Australia, it's been quite forward-looking, like you were saying. We've got this new AUSTRAC regime subject. It's been deemed a commodity by the tax office. Traders are subject to capital gains tax. Do you think there's a chance, I guess, for Australia to lead potentially in cryptocurrency around the world?
In digital assets, yeah. So taking away a bit of cryptocurrencies, we were a leader. So that's when I started doing this here, because we have one regulator who is incredibly open and innovative, and they have a sandbox. And we've been doing this a long time in Australia. Don't be mindful of that. We've got a government that is very supportive and tech friendly. And we're a very mature market. So we tick all the boxes in being able to be responsibly adopt technology.
You think the government's listening to blockchain companies right now?
Yes. But as I said, in larger jurisdictions where there's a lot of legacy systems, it's harder to embrace technology. As far as the bigger countries, we're awesome. I think Australia, and be mindful, the whole reason we're talking about digital assets is because the Australian government came up with this. So we've actually, we've re-educated and moved the term from a cryptocurrency to what a digital asset is. So it's a new asset class. So we're really good at this. Australia was the leader in this, and I hope we continue to be.
Yeah. Wonderful. What's coming up next? What's the new projects you're working on or going to be working on, Loretta?
It's countries. So it's how do I bring the ecosystem with me, the projects in the ecosystem, how do we all partner, and how do we now all work with just different jurisdictions to build out blockchain ecosystem. And I think we all looked at cryptocurrencies. I mean, there's a lot of money that we're made in cryptocurrencies, but blockchain goes beyond that. So it's all the associated companies that come with blockchain technology, supply chains, provenance of goods, digital IDs. So working with how I can help the ecosystem be better understood by the regulators and governments, and expanding this to places in the world, emerging markets that really need blockchain.
Gotcha. Any favourite coins or projects right now?
I don't.
This is not financial advice, purely information and opinions. Loretta and myself are merely talking about cryptocurrency and giving our views, not financial advice.
I only have Bitcoin. I hold one coin and one coin only, and that's Bitcoin, and I don't trade it. I mean, it's a store of value.
Wonderful. It's
because I believe in the underlying technology, and I believe in Bitcoin.
Wonderful. Any trends you're seeing in the market right now? You know, we've been in a bit of a bear market and things like that. Anything sort of, you know, you want to talk about, or things you're seeing, and where are we going from here?
Well, as I said, it's, you know, this is an asset class. It's a new asset class. Yeah, coins are coming into existence every day that have multiple different use cases. I think the trends is that we see coins that have been used, and the companies that are used to actually build out the solutions, blockchain solutions. So yeah, the trend is that I think there will be more and more ICOs come in, more and more coins come into existence, and more companies are actually trying to raise money to solve problems.
Very cool. Talking about regulation and how it affects coin prices. The Bank of International Settlement has come out, the BIS has come out with a big report, which is, the BIS has 60 central banks. It has 95% of the world's GDP. It released this report. We've got a video here from the principal economist, Raphael Ayer. Joel, if you want to spin this video.
To answer this question, we build a data set of regulatory news events and systematically evaluate whether cryptocurrency markets react to regulatory news. We do find that there is a strong reaction of prices and transaction volumes. To exemplify, take a look at what happened when the US Securities and Exchange Commission in early 2017 denied an application for a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund. Immediately after the announcement, the price of Bitcoin dropped by 16%, and also other cryptocurrencies were strongly affected.
So this is really talking about, you know, we talked about saw the Winklevoss twins ETF back in 2017 getting rejected, and the Bitcoin price dropping. Right, that's one example. Then we had Japan ordered 6 cryptocurrency exchanges to improve their anti-money laundering practices or face punishment. Again, Bitcoin prices moved. I'm sure you've got the graph there, Joel, if you can bring up as well. We've got the researchers saying 6 currencies, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Monero, Zcash, and XRP are all compared. And there's this new index called the CRNI, which measures regulatory news on the whole. And obviously they found that Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Ethereum all responded in equal ways. Yep. Right? That's interesting. Zcash slightly less. But the big one, I think, that reacted the least was XRP, i.e. the token that Ripple created, but is not related to the token in any way, shape, or form. Just making that clear, Ripple and XRP, 2 separate things. And we'll talk about that in a second, but do you think this is a trend? Regulation news affects prices?
If you look at any asset class, regulation and news affects prices. So whether you're looking at an equity or a bond, or you know how any asset class responds to news. Whether if you're doing a bond, it's the interest rate movement, monetary policy. So regulation affects every asset class. Yes. You know, you have to be mindful of that. And yes, there's going to be moves between each are a bit differently, but it's a brand new asset class. It's volatile because it's new. Do
you think regulation will stabilise the prices a bit?
So regulation is really important because it brings legitimacy. As I said to you, over-regulation is bad, but when regulations come into play to identify that we're actually talking about a new asset class, that's a really good thing because it is a new asset class. And you know, and the volatility swings and the price swings are because it's trying to figure out how over time this asset works. It's very new. I mean, coming back only 2008 was when.
100%. So, given cryptocurrencies, I guess, are supposed to transcend governments to some extent, right? People having control, a peer-to-peer transfer of value. Do you think it's ironic that these markets are reacting so much to regulation?
So I think regulation, as I said, because there's a new asset class come into play. Now, the decentralisation of why things like Bitcoin were built because, it was a reaction to the GFC. We don't like governments, we don't like central banks, we don't trust anyone. But, the practices of I guess, what comes into part has been the total sort of philosophers of the technology and the anarchists who don't like anything, and people in the centralised world like myself and banks. Either end of this exponential graph not going to work. There has to be somewhere that we all meet in the middle to
and
make
everyone's
it
cool.
work.
We all agree on the rules.
Yes, and the mechanical enforcement of the rules of mathematics is very important in this. And it's Bitcoin. It's an opt-in or opt-out. It's it's where collaborators and competitors work.
Yep. I want to move on and talk about XRP, right? So XRP in this report, and I quote, this is a big deal. The XRP token also reacted less. Joel, if you want to bring this up, which may reflect that its network of trusted nodes is centrally controlled by its issuer Ripple, making the XRP token distinct from other permissionless cryptocurrencies. So the report is saying that XRP is indeed a centralized coin controlled by the central entity Ripple. That's a big deal, right? XRP has received obviously a fair share of flack about this, and we've got a diagram that we'll bring up in a second, but Ripple's even gone as far as sending out a statement to say that XRP is not owned by any single entity, not even Ripple, and it issued a series of cease and desist orders to media publications, including one that is very close to this organization right here. And that's why we very distinctly remove this association of Ripple and XRP, and we're very clear about this. I'm going to bring up this document between the differences of XRP and Ripple, right? And in this document, it says what it is. Ripple's a technology company. XRP is an independent digital asset. How is one related to that? Ripple is a software company that uses XRP and XRP Ledger in its product. The XRP Ledger cannot be owned by any single entity. But, at its core, right, Ripple can change this code, right? And Ripple own 80% of this token, and they sold $67 million worth of this token last quarter to fund their organization. Just these are facts. Yep. In your view, Loretta, is Ripple a security?
So I'm going to put something out there. It's the same with Ethereum. Like Ethereum is a protocol too, but it uses Ether. So Ripple is a protocol. It uses a cryptocurrency. The distinction between, I guess, private networks and public networks are different. The rule sets are different. The mechanical enforcement of rules, or how you change the consensus model, is very different to each of them. Ripple's an interesting one because it's this bizarre hybrid. A crypto, it's an interesting one. The token but it's like Ethereum. You say, so tell me what Ether does. I mean, the payment of choice for ICOs. So it's the same. You can could probably compare one of them to the other.
Well, the only thing is they're basically saying here on the website, it says Ripple does not control the digital asset or technology. They did create it. Yep. I'm assuming they could contribute to the code, and they own 60 billion XRP tokens. That's a few.
It's a number. Billion.
Considering they're trading at 50 cents each, that is about, I believe, $30 billion worth of XRP. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Who controls whether it succeeds? They're really trying to separate this token and this business, right?
Yep.
But then this report is saying, number one, it's centralized coin. Number two, it's controlled by the entity Ripple. And number three, it doesn't react in price like the other decentralized tokens. I'm not trying to make any accusations but I'm just talking about the facts here. Does this seem like, a security, or how a security, from your experience of how securities operate, companies own a large amount of their stock, they run and build a certain technology, they fund their company by selling such stock as well to run their organization. Does this feel like to you like it's potentially a security?
It feels like, and it looks like, but how it's considered by regulators, it depends. So, I mean, is Ethereum a security? You may argue, both. I mean, so it depends, I guess, on what you comply with security laws of where they're entities and what they're used for and what their regulator in different jurisdictions is.
And I guess to be clear, like, I just want to be open as well. We are trying to really specify these two different things. It's a very sensitive topic right now, so we are trying to tread carefully through this. But under Bermuda laws, would you say, is XRP where would it sit in those three buckets potentially?
As I said, it sits somewhere between a utility and a security, or something, a hybrid.
A hybrid,
so
right.
I think things like this, like Ethereum and Ripple, probably fit into the hybrid, whereas the regulation around them is examined, and it's for each regulator. But if you come into a jurisdiction, then you've got to abide by what they say that you are.
Right. Moving on, Walmart has had some salad issues, and they're potentially looking. They've had this massive breakout of E. coli, and they are requiring by the end this time next year that all salad producers that they work with be on the blockchain to have provenance of where their salad came from. They don't know what salad to throw out right now. Who knows where the salad...
Caesar.
Yeah, it could be Caesar, could be Romaine. You never know your luck in a salad Walmart city. We've got a little video here explaining the initiative. Joel, if you want to roll this, it is an end-to-end from farm to table.
This year, we've seen a record number of outbreaks recorded in the United States related to food. When an outbreak does happen, public health officials actually interview patients that have become ill. They'll find out food histories, and when they start developing a hypothesis on what they think the food vehicle might be, then they have to trace that back to source. And the way that works today is largely a paper trail exercise that sometimes runs dry. Food is a physical asset, and we all appreciate it, and it's very fragile. But we're digitizing attributes of food so that we can enhance how it flows from farm to table and run a safer, smarter, and more sustainable food system. With a blockchain traceability solution, potentially you could scan a product and trace that product back with precision and accuracy to source in seconds, not days or weeks. One of the features often talked about of blockchain is that it's democratic. What we mean by that is that it creates shared value. Today's announcement is a very exciting one. We're asking suppliers to join us in promoting greater food traceability. In the future, a customer could potentially scan a bag of salad and know with certainty whether it's involved in a recall or not. When it comes to food safety, it's not a competitive issue. We all win or lose together.
Well, Walmart has been said to be able to do better logistics than the American Army and UPS. Like, this is A-grade logistics. What do you think about this as a use case, Loretta?
I think this is one of the best use cases we have in the entire blockchain. Supply chain management, provenance of goods, it's things that, that affect people. You know, so I think, that's the most exciting thing is the provenance of a lettuce is very important if people are going to get sick. And also in other cases, like as I said to you before, it's like how do we now start to track things like cotton? The kid that was used in the village to make sure to harvest that cotton, do they fit into a whole lot of areas that child wasn't used in child labour? So we can use the blockchain, and the ability to track now, the traceability, the security, and the immutability of the technology is really important, and supply chain management and provenance of good is up there with my two favourite use cases.
Wonderful. Guys, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for watching. Again, follow Loretta on Twitter. We've got all her details up there. You can see she travels all around the world. She's an incredible pioneer, and do support her and do follow her and attend her events. Guys, subscribe to the channel. Again, shout out to Life Size Box for all of your support. And that's the Daily Exchange. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah!
Thank you.